What's up, everybody? Welcome to the stream. And what we're going to be doing today is sort of something a little bit outside the box as far as the... here, let me check this really quick. The camera is not on again. Hang on. There we go. Camera is now on. Okay. Today's going to be a little bit different as far as live stream / review is concerned, because what I want to do today, welcome to the stream, is, first of all, turn my stream off, is answer your guys' questions about Thrones of Decay alongside my review of Thrones of Decay, because doing the pre-recorded sounds cool, and I can be very direct about the things that I want to talk about when it comes to Thrones of Decay. But I thought what would be best is if you guys ask the questions and direct the review. I think that that's probably the best way to really tailor what it is that I want to talk about for when I do eventually produce a Thrones of Decay review. Because here's the thing, the embargo drops today. I can now talk about and tell you my opinions about Thrones of Decay, but to be honest, I'm not done with it. That's the only way that I can put it easily, is that I am not done with the content of Thrones of Decay. And because of that, I can't really tell you everything about it. So I have thoroughly explored Epidemius, Tamron, and Elspeth. I have played the dwarves for like 10 turns. Simply because I just did not have time, and I thought that it would be more advantageous to cover those particular aspects of the DLC. So what I'm going to do is load up my Tamron campaign, and we'll start with him and what I think about that individual faction. So any questions that you guys have, please sound off in the live chat, and that'll direct us. Actually, for the heck of it, how bad will this be? Well, you know what we'll do as far as well, I don't know what I'm doing here, so I don't actually want to. Here's what we'll do. We'll cheat so that I can get back to my campaign map.
Time to enjoy ourselves, children. They will rot.
And that way we can talk about everything that I want to talk about when it comes to Tamron. Okay, so as far as an overall package, what I would say is, I guess what I can start the review with is my experience with the embargo system. And I understand there's a multi-tier embargo system and all that sort of stuff when it comes to content reviews and drops and reveals and all that sort of stuff. And I'm okay playing that game. That's fine. What I would say in general is that it took a long time for this DLC to come out. And you can tell from messing with this DLC in relative comparison to the Shadows of Change DLC that there is a level of polish on this one that was maybe not quite there for the Shadows of Change situation. And my review for Shadows of Change still stands, but I think that it's clear to see that there was a lot of effort put into this DLC. Now, I think that what Creative Assembly ought to do when it comes to future DLCs is, and I know that some of you might get upset with me over this, you might take smaller bites. Because I was given, or we were given, I guess, content partners, and I guess I should go ahead and make sure that everything is copacetic here. I am in the Exalted program with Creative Assembly, and that gives me early access. I'm not in the like top tier. I'm in the one below that. I don't have any pay incentives or any of that kind of crap. This is me just testing a product out that I enjoy and giving feedback. I did uncover a few bugs. It appear to have been fixed up to this point. And there have been many things that whole association with creators to go and test things is very important for end product for you guys. So there's a lot of value there. What I would say is this DLC was big enough, and I've seen what some of the other creators have put out. I try not to watch a whole lot of other people's stuff because they don't want to emulate their stuff. This thing is huge, and the amount of time that I had for me personally to evaluate this DLC was insufficient. So what I would say is Creative Assembly, if you're going to put out a DLC of this size in the future, we need like twice as much time. Okay, we need like twice as much testing time, and then larger gaps between the embargo drops and things like that. Like, because like I said in the intro, only had time to play like 10 turns of Dwarves, and I didn't even have, and this is just the DLC stuff. I have another gig that I have to do on a regular basis, and I can't sit here and play video games all day, as much as I would like to. If you guys would like me to play video games all day, then please, by all means, hit all those buttons, right? Make us popular. So what I would say is that in order to speed up the DLC process and make it more manageable for your creators, as well as just in general keep the buyers of your product more consistently happy. I like the schedule of hot fixes and all that sort of stuff. It's been pretty consistent. Let's take the smaller bites on the DLC. So I understand that they already promised a Thrones of Decay, so they had already pretty much said that they were going to do this exact thing, so they're kind of locked into doing this. But in the future, hey, maybe instead of having 3 factions for a DLC, I'm giving you an excuse here, Creative Assembly, instead of having 3 factions for a DLC that takes you 6 to 8 months to do, why don't we work on, in this instance, why don't we pick Nurgle, right? And do all the Nurgle things. So that's a Legendary Lord and an FLC Lord, plus the additional, Legendary heroes and, the reworks and all that sort of stuff. Because there's a lot in this is what I would say a huge chunk of content. And I would also suspect that by doing such a large swath of content all at once, you end up with more things to micromanage on the dev side, not only from initial creation, but hey, when you start fielding this to content creators to do your beta testing for you, and we come up with problems, well, that's that much more rush that you are in, versus if you take a smaller bite, then perhaps you wouldn't have to do that. So I even think that maybe, yeah, so I guess what I would say is, hey, do the individual race packs. I think that would be much more manageable. And I know that some people are going to dislike that, but like what you did with the Chaos Dwarves, for instance, that was a single race pack. That was a fantastic DLC. And you got to concentrate on all things Chaos Dwarf. And in doing that, I think we got an amazing piece of content. And I'm not saying that this isn't amazing. I'm just saying there's a lot to pack in here. Versus like when it came to reviewing the Chaos Dwarfs, which I was not part of the program at that point in time, everything was sort of uniform with small tweaks on the other side. So if you knew how to play one of the Legendary Lords for the Chaos Dwarfs, then you knew how to play all of the Legendary Lords for the Chaos Dwarfs. And that was my phone, not yours. So let me make sure that wasn't important. Yeah, it was important, but it's not imminently important. So, okay. So, again, the way this is working is if you guys have questions, post them in the chat, and then I will try to address them specifically. But let's roll into Tamron. The thing about Tamron is that he is a curb stomp lord. This is the curb stomp of all curb stomp campaigns. This is more curb stompy than Ikit Claw, and I love it. This is fantastic. This is exactly what I wanted from Nurgle. This is great. And I can say that now. This is very well done. The integration of the new DLC units into the faction in a couple ways. First of all, normal DLC recruitment. Here, let's just raise the Lord. Here's a good one. You know, just including a melee Lord. Do I think that the melee Lord ought to be locked behind DLC? Probably not. So I think that's a little bit weird. Locking the other stuff behind the DLC, like the upgraded units. Yeah, I was going in here to raise the Lord. That's right.
Lord of Nurgle.
If we go in here to recruit, still normal recruitment, but if we look at integration of these, basically what they did for integration of all of this was reduce some of these cycle times down one. So like, I think that if you have the vanilla game, and then you guys can check me on this to make sure that I'm tracking properly, things like the soul grinders, wherever they went, usually weren't available like right here. They would usually be available like a little bit farther up, but they've pushed those down as the power creep has come to fruition, and now we have the Toad Dragons and the Great Unclean Ones. The Great Unclean Ones are still, you know, top tier units, but the top slot has been replaced a little bit with a little bit more powerful unit, and that's generally how a lot of these have happened. You can see the same thing over here with the Cav with the Rot Knights. The Rot Knights definitely take the top tier when it comes to, I mean, Chaos Knights were already pretty OP. The vulnerabilities of the Nurgle Chaos Knights have been pretty much eclipsed by the Rot Knights. And I would also say that I think that the major winner of this DLC isn't actually... Sorry, I have something in my teeth. Isn't actually any of the factions that we have covered. Not Dwarves, not Nurgle, not Empire. The major winner of this DLC is the Warriors of Chaos, because they get it all, right? So I'm looking forward to playing Warriors of Chaos, and the only thing that I have to somewhat criticize, having opened the campaign up for Warriors of Chaos, is that those units are listed under the Gifted tab. And the thing about Tamron is that the majority of his DLC units are mortal units. The gifted units are supposed to be demonic. They're supposed to be gifts of Nurgle, so they're not supposed to be that, and almost all the stuff is mortal related. So I'm a little bit meh on that, but I understand they were working within the confines of what they had. Maybe we'll get another Warriors of Chaos DLC. Who knows, that reworks some of that stuff. Okay, let's look at what I would say about his... Oh yeah, we were talking about unit recruitment. So unit recruitment occurs the normal way, but then you also get these units that appear at full health. And these are specific to each of his chieftains, right? Now, they are limit capped, and I don't think that they're overly punishing in their cost. I could see that it could be argued that you have to first purchase the capacity, and then you also have to have the favor to be able to recruit the unit, right? Like, in order to recruit this unit, you had to first give that capacity.
Father Nurgle, make yourselves.
And then to recruit it, you have to go in here and then add it. Now, you don't have to pay favor, but you have to pay upkeep, right? So it's free, but I don't think that it's overly punishing to do that.
We'll spread
So
I'm
okay with that aspect of the thing, given that these do show up.
Of disease.
Where is that unit? They do show up at full health. Okay. So I had that. I think I stated that actually a little bit backwards. Now that I think about it, I was thinking about the Elspeth part of the DLC where you have to expand her capacities and pay for it. So we'll get to that here in a second. In the chat, the question is, does Tamron/Nurgle have an additional 4% upkeep cost per army from supply lines? And yes, it does have supply lines. So that is the other thing that I have somewhat of a problem with. You can... How do I put this? You can pitch to me that the demons have supply lines, as in there's a finite amount of winds of magic, and by extending themselves outside the chaos wastes, that requires additional stress on the ability of the army to channel that magic. I can buy that, okay? And Tamron focuses on mortals. So what I would like to see integrated into this whole thing, and this was a great opportunity that I think was maybe perhaps a little bit missed, is if your army is led by a demon, then so now that I think about that out loud, there's a double-edged sword here, and I'm convincing myself that supply lines are okay. So the demons need extra. It takes extra for them to extend themselves outside the realm of chaos or the chaos wastes. The mortal units have to be fed. So I'm okay, I think now that I think about it, I'm okay with them having supply lines, especially because from a playability standpoint and an overall ease of campaign, a campaign like Tamron's, as I said, is a curb stomp campaign. This is turn 50, and I easily eliminated in the first couple turns Kolek Sun Eater, easily eliminated Archaon, easily eliminated Boris, easily eliminated Daniel, which was always easy to do. Took out the DLC Dwarf Lord at pretty much full power. Have now taken out Katerin. Have taken out Castalton. You see, it's not all that difficult. And I'm raising an army over here that is going to be able to take out Grimgor by itself. Now, what negates that a little bit, that upkeep cost for Tamron, the chat says supply lines are an outdated system. I agree. I agree that it is an outdated system. However, in the absence, I like what they did with Chaos Dwarfs, for instance. They don't have supply lines. They found other ways to limit your growth without needing to just dock you some extra arbitrary amount. So I sort of get what's going on there when it comes to. I understand why they would want to limit your growth, but the arbitrary extra 4% for an army thing, yeah. So here's the thing. The thing about Tamron is we look at him. He's in this province. by having him in the same province as whatever else you have. Let me find the trait here. Here you go. Upkeep minus 25% for all units, and that is for armies in the local province. So if you can stack a bunch of troops in the area across a couple different armies, and they are less 25% because they are in the same province as Tamron. So I think the purpose of this is to make it into a horde. Like you're marching with like 2 or 3 armies following you on with troops, and again, that turns you into an absolute indestructible swath as you move through. So I think that's very cool. That definitely changes how I play any faction, because I like to raise armies and move in a whole bunch of different directions. You can't really do, well, you can, but you're going to limit your combat power because you can just roll in with 320 stacks into any settlement and be in the green with Tamron. So, in fact, if you look here, that lord that I just rose over here, if I disband this dude, I'm back in the green. And that's because I have these in the same province, right? So that's big. What are your thoughts on Tamron's defeat trait? So for those of you who don't know what Tamron's defeat trait is, that is, and I think Mercy the Mad put this out. I watched his video. I like his cheesiness stuff that he did. Definitely go watch that video. That is plus recruitment for heroes. So you get extra heroes every time you beat him. So the ones that obviously take great advantage of that are Archaon, Kolek over here. The Chaos Dwarfs also have some of their heroes locked behind some harder to get things. So being able to gain access to those really quickly, definitely valuable, I think. Other factions that I think that could possibly use those in the early, because really what it comes down to is the faction able to get over to Tamron without stressing themselves out to the point where they overextend and get smashed up because they've taken a strong army up into the Chaos Wastes. I don't even think that Kislev can get there really in a timely manner to take advantage of early campaign victories against Tamron. Now, he does come back in 2 turns, so you can farm that trait, but I think the Chaos Dwarfs, specifically Zatan, can do that. Grimgor can probably do that. The 2 Chaos factions that I mentioned can do that. One that I think is probably good on your timeline that you can probably use to good effect is maybe Clan Eshin, because Clan Eshin is severely hurting for is severely hurting for Warlock Engineer capacity. So I find myself typically these days in my Eshin campaigns up in the Chaos Wastes anyway. It's not really a stretch to turn the corner up here and head north and smack him a few times. Boris could. And I do believe that I just said that Boris probably could. If he's already over here because he's already fought Archaon. So I don't think that it's much of a stretch given that you're going to be in the early stages of the campaign fighting Archaon anyway. So bebopping over here a little bit to deal with that, probably not a problem. As far as Epidemius is concerned over here, I don't think it's really worth your time to go over there and fight him because it's actually pretty easy to expand your unit capacity as Nurgle for those heroes. So I don't think that you really need to go out of your way to do that. But as far as like Katerin and Kastalton, those guys probably not coming over here to do that. You might consider Clan Molder. Also has a little bit of a problem when it comes to Warlock Engineer capacity, but you don't need as many with them because their starting army, Thrott's starting army is going to be, it's going to be monsters anyway. So it's not until you're like your second and third armies do you really have a problem with Warlock Engineer capacity, and by that time you've got several settlements, and you also have the food mechanics, so raising those settlements to top tier is a little bit easier, so getting those capacities is a little bit easier for those. So Daniel, I don't think Daniel is close, but I have only ever played one Daniel campaign, and I have no intentions of ever going back to Daniel unless they do something to fix him. It's just not a campaign that I find particularly fun. Let's see. Vampire Coast can, but look at the starting locations of all the Vampire Coasts. So you got Silostra's over here, Noctilus is down here, and you've got Sartosa over here. By the time you get all the way up there, I mean, I suppose if you're making it a goal to get up there, then I suppose you could. If you just find yourself raiding up there, then cool. There are other ways to expand your hero capacity, though. So I'm not entirely sure. I mean, unless you wanted to go, if you want to do a themed campaign, sure, why not? But I would say that the Cathayan factions maybe could do that, but the Cathay's got enough problems with it as is, and I have no intentions of really playing Cathay anyway, so that's what I have to say about that. Let me think if there's anything else that I really wanted to point out when it comes to Tamron that I liked or did not like. I do like... I don't like that he doesn't have a set bonus. Like, he doesn't have multiple items, right? So if we go to him... Like, that's one of the things that I really like about quest battles, right? Is having multiple battles to get a set bonus. It feels like a completion of something. So that's not a thing for him, right? It's not really a thing that you can do for him. However, what I do like is that each of his individual chieftains do have... that was the wrong thing. Each of his individual chieftains do have a quest battle that is fought for their specific devoted status. So that's cool. So you do get some additional story, and I think all of these guys have a specific talisman that does individual things, and each one of them has a boon or two that goes towards your army, whatever army they're associated with. So I think that there's a lot of dimension to the Tamron campaign. You can tell, in my opinion, that this was really the focus of the development. And then I would say that from my time playing the Dwarves and the Empire campaign, that they are kind of a little bit closer to two sides of the campaign. This is fairly unique as far as development is concerned when it comes to what is this related to everything else in the game thus far. This is pretty unique. Most of the mechanics that we have seen, that we see in the Dwarf and the Empire campaigns, have other flavors elsewhere in the game thus far, and they are somewhat similar. So if we go ahead and let's just load into my Elspeth campaign that I've been doing live stream. We're not going to actually do anything in the campaign today. I would like to save that. Probably do one more installment of Elspeth live streaming. Probably do it after the final build drops. I just simply don't have time to do it today. That's one of the reasons that I'm putting my review out in this format, because quite frankly, I ran out of time. If this loads up. So if you have questions about Tamron, put them below, and we can go back to that.
Master Engineer.
So if we look at this mechanic with the Imperial Gunnery School, again, freaking cool, like this. The other thing I would say about this campaign and the Tamron campaign is this is very straightforward. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure this out, right? There's moving parts here, but it's not super complicated. You get the schematics, you spend the schematics, you get the buffs, right? You pile up enough buffs, you improve, or you pile up enough boons, you get the upgraded to the Imperial Armory, right? And then her mechanic, specifically the Amethyst Armory. Dig that. I like this a lot. What I don't like, really, that... Okay, I'll just come out and say it. What I don't like is this, all right? I don't really care for the Gardens of Moor. And I understand having something special for her faction. Like, I understand that. This mechanic works inside of the Empire, which I can understand. Not having the ability to jump outside of the... Well, excuse me, I take that back. This is not an Empire. So that description is actually erroneous. Let's go back here. Okay, no, it is right. You can jump to any friendly or neutral Empire-owned settlement is where you can build one of these. So if we expand all the way over into the Badlands, for instance, then we can use the Garden of Moor to jump over there. And I see the utility of that. Being able to manage your empire. But I don't really... like teleport for teleport's sake. That's the easiest way to distill it down. So, in my live stream, I used this once to hop down here, and it wasn't necessary that I did it because I pre-planned for that. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but I'm pretty good at empire management. If you're a Skaven player, you have to be good at empire management, right? Because you're just going to have stuff popping off everywhere. And I think that most of you guys know that up to this point that I'm a Skaven specialist. So if you are good at playing the Skaven, then you are good at managing rebellions constantly. And having a mechanic there specifically for the purposes of jumping around your empire to put out fires, I think it's a little bit handicappy. I don't think that it's really necessary, and having teleport for teleport's sake, while it would speed things up, I think that it takes the edge off of the empire management. That I think it cheapens the campaign a little bit. So I don't really care for the Gardens of Moor teleport mechanic. Now, as far as the other stuff that they've got in the Gardens of Moor, where did it go? The buildings. Let's find one. Yeah, the Garden of Moor. The various buildings, I can see these being very impactful. In fact, I built these because being able to quickly, again, turn 33, okay, turn 33, I have, oop, that's the wrong button. I can't build battle wizards here, hang on. I have 6 battle wizards on the campaign map at turn 33. That is impossible to do in any other faction. Even, I think, even at... Yeah, even Gelt's campaign that I did play around with for a little bit, I don't think that you can do that. Having those battle wizards, and how I have used them, is to put them up in bands of noble so that we can just boost building construction like that, right? Having that is huge. Less the other things that I didn't even get into using, which are upkeep for armies. So if you put a Garden of More there and needed an army, there for just holding the line, like for instance, I was able to pretty much toast Scrag down here, but a good use, if I wasn't doing the whole thing with the nobles, for instance, would be to go into this Fort Sol, which is the only way that you can get into the Southern Empire over here, build this building here, and just sit there, and instead of worrying about building up the garrison, which doesn't really give you all that much, instead of building up the garrison here, you could just park another army there. So I see that as very cool, very good idea as far as creating another dimension under the standard building slots. And I think that there's some utility that you can get there, particularly in those locations like Fort Sol that don't really do anything else for you. They are simply a stop for the enemy factions. So I think that that's cool. Her Amethyst Armory units. I like that they're separate. This is, again, one of her mechanics that only she can do. Being able to boost them separately from everything else is pretty interesting. So I like this aspect of it. The only thing that I don't like here is that you have to double pay for this. So do we have the money? We don't even have the money to do this. So if I wanted to recruit, let's go to her Amethyst Armory. This is different than the Tamron mechanic. If I wanted these Amethyst Outriders, which these Amethyst Outriders, by the way, these are Outriders with grenade launchers that are kind of wacky, okay? Hey, Super Chat. Thank you very much. Tom Quinn, you're the reason I fell in love with Skaven. Thank you. Well, I'm glad that I have corrupted you into worshiping the Great Horned Rat. So, 50 euro super chat. Thank you very much, sir. Let's see here. These Amethyst Outriders with grenade launchers that also fire a missile that does magic damage. Okay, pretty cool. On top of that, you can also upgrade them in other ways. Cool. The problem is that you have to double pay for this. So this cost me 1,000 schematics. Okay, so I click the 1,000 schematics, I increase the capacity of this. And then, if I go to one of these armies, let's find one of my armies. Let's go to this army here. I want to... Actually, this one I have to move to get... It needs to be in something. So, Amethyst Armory. Right here. I also have to pay for this on top of it. So not only am I paying upkeep, but I also have to pay the initial treasury to hire it. I understand as far as a realism thing, like you wouldn't just not have to pay your troops, right? But from a fun perspective, I understand that they're trying to limit these so that they're extra units. Increase the schematic cost. Don't make me pay for it twice. Okay, I get the extra upkeep here. That's fine. It can still cost upkeep, but making me pay for it on top of it seems a little bit too punishing for me. I prefer the Tamron mechanic where you increase the capacity and you just get the unit. You still have to pay for upkeep, but you don't have to pay for the unit when you recruit it. I do think that it is good that it is an instant recruit, so that you don't have to wait a turn for it. So you can order them up in a pinch. Got it. Definitely like that. Let's see. Other stuff with the Elspeth faction. Yeah, I think I've covered everything that I wanted to say about Elspeth. the chat makes a very good point. Alex says Chaos Dwarfs have the same mechanic: unlock with armaments, but buy with gold. Yes, they do, but they also don't have supply lines. So there's a big difference there, because I still pay supply lines. So you can see there I've got an extra 12%. So that's on, again, full stuff. So I get reducing the supply line penalty in Warhammer 3 versus Warhammer 2 to make it less punishing. I like supply lines for what they accomplish, not necessarily the concept of supply lines, but if I've got all three of these things where I've got to pay for it with one resource, I got to recruit it with another resource, and then I also have to pay extra tax on top of it. I'm an American. I really don't appreciate taxes very much, okay? if you haven't got that drift. This feels like a tax to me. And I'll pay this one tax, but don't tax it 2 and 3 times on top of it, right? That's when we get really hacked off, right? So I feel like I'm paying this tax, and I'm paying... So I feel like I'm paying this fee, right? Outright. And then I'm paying another sin tax up front. So, like, this is like buying your item. This is like... Here, where'd it go? I got the analogy here. This is like buying your suppressor, okay? This
Yes, my lord.
is like paying your tax stamp. And this, up here, is paying income tax on that expenditure on top of it. Or paying property tax on top of it. So I see what you're saying, right? These mechanics exist, but I think the Chaos Dwarfs is not a one-to-one comparison because they don't pay supply lines. There's also another batch of limiting factors on Chaos Dwarfs. So, because I don't have a campaign to show you, let's hop into... let's go back to the main menu. And let's just open a Macason campaign, because I think there's something important to showcase here that's...
I command here.
where is it? Dwarfs. Make it alphabetical again. Okay.
Our factions have taken our foes.
I think there's something important to showcase here, because I didn't have enough time to really fully explore this DLC, but I saw lots of things posted about the DLC. So, or the dwarven side of the DLC. So, I'm less interested in the dwarves, even though Malachi Macason is one of my favorite characters in the lore. I'm less interested in the dwarves. Now, what I would say about the dwarves is this is more complicated of a DLC than the ones that we've covered up to this point.
Malachi Macason.
We'll just cheat really quick, so we can make sure that everything is viewable here.
Oh, we're going to battle.
I think to access everything, we got to. I think we have to take a settlement.
Slayer by nature. Next. Have it, you
So-
bastards. It's not home, but it'll do for now.
Okay, so on top, I
Engineer.
like that we have a semi-horde, because not enough semi-hordes exist in the game, I think. I think maybe they shot their whole wad with the Beastmen and the whole semi-horde thing. They didn't want to, like, redo it a whole bunch, so they brought that mechanic back in that Malachi himself has the Spirit of Grumney and then can build buffs and recruitment capacities on his specific thing. But then, built on top of that, we still have the Great Book of Grudges. We still have the Forge. We have the Age of Reckoning. there's a lot of crap going on here. And if you're into a super complicated gameplay, I think that this approaches or maybe even eclipses the complication of the Chaos Dwarfs. That's one of the things I loved about the Chaos Dwarfs. It's just I opened this campaign, played a couple turns with it, and I was like, I cannot review this because I will need to master this. The other campaigns were very kind of linear. Like, hey, get the thing, spend it on the thing, get the other thing that you want, and then smash the crap out of the enemies with either your guns or your new monsters, right? This campaign is a little bit more complicated when it comes to all the things that you need to do. However, there is something very interesting about this campaign compared to a lot of the other Order factions, and that is that the Gotrek and Felix campaign mechanic has been reworked. Malachi starts with both of them, which is very thematic to the lore. This is interesting because instead of having a bunch of bullcrap level frontline troops, you start out with 2 legendary heroes. And that's pretty freaking cool. So I think that there's a lot of people who follow the books, which I am currently actually reading one of the books. I know that some people don't really like that term for those of us who run audiobooks, but I'm currently on chapter 19 of Elfslayer. So as someone who is currently reading the books, I appreciate this. This is a lot of fun, and I'm very much looking forward to getting into this. I just don't have as much substance to currently give to you on Malachi's mechanics because I want to make sure that I thoroughly understand them before I give you any thorough review on them. Now, what I will say about this faction is as follows. Fighting against them is hard. The Spirit of Grumney is super dangerous, as it should be, given that it is an airship. And if you read the lore, super dangerous weapon. If you've read any of the books or anything like that. So, I think that as far as integration of the Spirit of Grumney, as far as going up against it from an enemy perspective, I think they did a good job on that. I just haven't had enough time to really flesh it out to know whether integration of it from the player's perspective is as... I'm sure that it will be powerful, but is it as impactful as it is when you have to fight against it? So that's what I'm looking forward to finding out. I just simply haven't had enough time to do that. So that paired with the Gotrek and Felix side of it, I think is definitely a new cool spin. So I'm assuming that you don't have to fight the quest battle for obtainment of Gotrek and Felix, which also, I think, as far as the Order factions are concerned, having to go do an actual hard quest battle to obtain some pretty powerful characters, I think is important, because before it was just like, oh, I'm going to run over here and recruit Gotrek and Felix. No big deal. I don't think that it should be as easy to buff. Now, on top of that, it is no longer a time-limited thing. So before, it was kind of a throwaway. You just recruit them and you get them for a certain period of time. Now it is a more vigorous reward, if you could say. So the other thing that I would like to do is cover something that I covered at the beginning of the campaign, or in the beginning of the video today, and that is go over and look at
Sigma's
the Warriors of Chaos. So let's just do... Oh no, we don't want to...
Lord.
I screwed that up. Let's go over to...
As I hold Gal Maraz, I am ready.
Warriors of Chaos. Like her should be in alphabetical order. Let's just do Festus so that we can quickly take a look at how this stuff has been integrated, because I know that it might be a little bit more complicated on the undivided lords. I did quickly look at Festus to kind of see how these things were integrated. The Beastmen, they simply got the Pestigors. And when I looked at them, I was kind of a little bit disappointed to see that the Chaos Touch Gores were integrated the way that they did. I thought, and I guess we can spend a little bit of time on that. Can we see the... Yeah, we can. Okay, so look here. If we go all the way down, you can see that the Toad Dragon is a gifted unit. Like right next to, at the same cost of, a Great Unclean One. Same thing with the Plague Ogres of the two persuasions, right? So both their the regular ones and the great weapons. And then yeah. He doesn't have... Okay, here, we can do it this way. Yeah, here we go. So if we look... Where is it? Maybe it's here. Oh, yeah, there it is. The Rot Knights, however, have been integrated as we expected that they should be. They are an upgraded Chaos Knight. So you get the Chaos Knights of Nurgle, and then you can upgrade them to the Rot Knights. So that's okay. I'm cool with that. I would like to have seen... I think there's an opportunity here, because the trolls are the same way, so you can see that you can get the Chaos Trolls here. And you can upgrade them to... Yeah, you have to move them over to the Nurgle side of things to get them as Bile Trolls. Yeah, see, there you go. You have to give them the mark of Nurgle. I would like to see, because I don't see the Pestigors in here, it would be nice if they would integrate some of the Beastmen units into that Warband Recruitment. It wouldn't be all that difficult to add a couple key Beastmen units into the Chaos. Because here's the thing. It is very thematic, if you read the lore, that the Chaos... You know how the Skaven use Skaven slaves and clan rats and like wave attacks before they send in their expensive troops? The Chaos Warriors do that with Beastmen. And they don't really have to whip or lash them or like push them, and they do that willingly. All right, the Beastmen are all about being the frontline troops. So having them integrated, I think, into the Warband Recruitment could offer an opportunity for more substantive play. So you don't need to add in... let's go to a Beastman campaign, because I want to show you exactly what I mean with my disappointment with the unit caps and things like that with the Beastmen. Let's do Beastmen, alphabetical order. Ortonia, Beastmen. Let's just hop in here, and I'll show you. Having those in the Warband Recruitment, you don't need to have Ungor Raiders in there, but you could have like spammy Gores. You could have like Ungors and Ungors, Gores, and Bestigors. And you start with the Ungors, you upgrade them to Gores, and then you have the choice to diversify them into either Bestigors or Chaos Touch Gores. You see what I'm saying? So you can go... Currently, you would be able to do Zangors and Pestigors. So if we go into here, you can see that the Pestigors are over here, and they are not co-located with the Zangors, which are down here. They still have the same recruitment cost, right? But the Chaos Dwarf, or Chaos Touched Gores should be some extension of the Gores. You see what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying that you need to combine the Gore Herd with shields and the Gore Herd with the Zangors and the Pestigors. You could. I would be okay with that. I'm not saying that they have to do it that way, but at least make it so that I can get... okay, actually, I think that's probably the best way to do it, because when I upgrade the capacity for Ungor herds, when they're combined like this, I can recruit one of each, right? I can recruit a Gore herd and a Gore herd with shields if I increase this unit capacity. If you combine these two together in their own class as Chaos Touched Gores, because I'm assuming that we're going to get Slang Gores and Corn Gores as well, at least I hope that we do, I would assume that all the Chaos Touched Gores could be in their own category. You could also combine them with the Gores and I would be happy. But that's how that's currently integrated, and I think that there is a little bit of a tweak that could be done here. It would simply be a tweak. It wouldn't even be that hard. Graphical changes and just connect these things up, right? So that's what I would say about that aspect of it. A little bit disappointed with the way that the Beastmen units have been integrated. Will they change that in the future? I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is, again, open it up to the chat. If you guys have specific questions you want me to run down, I will. I have one more thing that I wanted to share with you guys for today that was on my list of things that I wanted to touch on. If you have any specific questions, put them in the chat now, and we will drive the review in that direction to go run that information down for you. Okay, actually, two things. I think another opportunity was missed, and I'm going to go ahead and voice this now. As a Skaven specialist, why does Clan Pestilence not have the plague mechanic? Okay, so I know that some of the other content creators have put their hat into the ring. You know, hey, we're plague. Let's get that done. So that, don't expect any changes for the Skaven on the current build, although they might do that by the time they simply probably just have to port it in and, you know, change what the button does. But currently not a thing. Hopefully in the future, especially if you guys say stuff, maybe we'll get that. But the other thing that I wanted to show was going back to Shadows of Change. We need to go look at the Changeling, and we covered this for those of you who watched the live stream last night. This will be a review. But the upgrades to the Changeling's mechanics include some of the new heroes that we have access to through Thrones of Decay. So if you look here, let's do, it's under his tab here, Formless Horror. So if we were to do Nurgle, you can see that we get all the legendary lords in his form change, right? And we get, I can't pronounce that, Kazik, the Befouled. You do not get the additional 6 chieftains, which I think they probably could have put those in. It probably would have been okay. Empire, you still get Gotrek, although I don't think that Gotrek was and Felix were previously things that you could do with him. So I think that's a change. I don't think that you could previously do that with him. The new legendary hero. Toddy is in here. I don't remember if that was a thing previously. I don't think Todd was in here previously. And, of course, Elspeth's in here. And then for the dwarves, in alphabetical order, dwarfs. You also have Felix in here, which I thought was a little bit... So, I don't know if there's a stat difference. I'd have to go back and look. I don't know if there's a stat difference between Gotrek and Felix under the Chaos. Let's look at it really quick. This doesn't help because I can't freeze frame it. But Gotrek, you guys watching, right? You can tell me if it changes. Here, I'm going to take a picture of it, actually. I'll take a picture of it, and then we can compare Gotrek's stuff and the dwarves versus he's in Kislev and he's in... Yeah, we'll just use the Kislev because that should be more... Yeah, that's all identical, right? So you can recruit them from any of the... I'm assuming they've done this so that you can recruit them from any of the times that you encounter him. And then dwarfs... Where do the dwarfs go? You obviously get McCason in here for the Formless Horror for the dwarves. So those are the changes to the Changelings mechanics as it relates to the new heroes and the new lords. So I think that makes logical sense, although I think they could very easily have added those other heroes. And I checked already, they do not appear under the individual rosters. Like, you can't go to, like, the Chaos Dwarves and find the Chaos Dwarf Chieftain for Tamron. He's not under there. So, anyway, barring no additional questions, this is my initial review of Shadows of Change, or not Shadows of Change, of Thrones of Decay. And my initial recommendation when people ask, should I purchase Thrones of Decay? And again, I don't have any links anywhere. I'm working on a link where you guys could purchase the thing and then it gives a kickback back to the channel if you want to do that. For some reason, mine hasn't been linked up yet, for whatever reason. Not a big deal. Don't really care. Wouldn't be a substantive amount of money anyway. I would say the uniqueness of being able to purchase the portions of the DLC that you are most interested in is very important. Because, personally speaking, if it wasn't Malachi McCason, I probably wouldn't have personally purchased the Dwarf part of the DLC myself. Having seen now that it is Malachi, I probably would have wanted to purchase that thing. As far as the Empire and the Nurgle side of things, I was definitely going to purchase those, right? So that's kind of where my baseline would be. Having messed with mostly the Nurgle side of stuff and the Empire side of stuff, I can recommend those. I think that there's definitely some playability there. Both of those campaigns I'm going to put on the easier side of the spectrum. I think that if you're into guns, then definitely the Empire buffs when it comes to the DLC faction are definitely really cool. And the spin on death magic that Elspeth brings is interesting, because I generally except for when playing as Nurgle, don't recruit death wizards. Because I think that they get back loaded. The front load, you can do strong damage to individual entities. And that's all they get really up front. But the real reason that you use a lot of magic is to do area of effect damage and buffs. She doesn't really get that. Or, excuse me, death casters don't really get that. She really does, though. So the question in the chat is, what specific spells can Elspeth upgrade the most? Cost reduction or power? So she gets a special buff for the Purple Sun of Xerius that reduces it by 6 winds of magic for, and I'm pulling this out of my head, 6 winds of magic for the standard and 9 winds of magic for the upgraded. And on top of that, she also gets...
Empire's
quote it right. She gets an additional 15% reduction in her skill line, but then on top of that,
Sigmar's
her
will.
base is
The Empire needs the Dark
cooldown
Lady
20%
of
for Lore of Death magic. Yeah. Yeah. So she's already got a reduction. Let's just, for the heck of it, let's load into that campaign, and I can give you all the buffs. And we can also check myself to see if I was correct or not. I think that her individually, as a death caster, is a really, really good use of death casting. What also works into that is that the integration of so many powerful guns into her faction makes it that you don't really need any additional magic. So if you're looking to still stay in the Warhammer fantasy and do kind of a gunpowder heavy campaign, then Elspeth is cool, and you don't really have to do super magic user. Versus, like, if you're playing as Nurgle, you're playing as Nurgle to create up big armies and douse them with putrid magic constantly, right? Like, that's one of the reasons that you do that. Where is she?
Knowledge
Let's see
is
here.
power.
Elspeth.
Elspeth
So again,
von Draken.
reduction, 20% cooldown for her spells. And then she also gets, again, 6 and 9 for the Purple Sun of Xerius. That doesn't deal with that. 15% for Lore of Death. And Winds of Magic Capacity, plus 10, so I forgot about that. This has to do with her special thing, and then this is regen. So that's all of the things that she gets when it comes to... Let me just make sure that there isn't anything else here. Yeah, that's all the special stuff that she gets for Lore of Death. But that makes Lore of Death much more impactful when it comes to... yeah, these don't have anything to do with it. Yeah. Much more impactful for using on the battlefield. She, of course, gets, you know, all of these normal things that you expect to be in the area. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, the putting her on the Carmine Dragon allows her to use... Oh, good point.
Dark
Quest
Lady
items.
of Gnome.
That's what I needed. The Pale Scythe gives you mastery of your spells up to 60%, spell resistance up to 20%. It increases your base, it decreases your base miscast chance. Also gives you a minus 10% on the Lore of Death spells. So there's an additional 10% into everything that we already did. Winds of Magic Capacity for her Death's Timekeeper, which also comes with Perfect Vigor, which helps with that whole dragon thing. And then her set bonus gives mostly things having to do with magic drop chance, right? So there's where that extra little bit that I was missing, I guess I could have gotten it from her skills over here as well. But yes, very impactful when it comes to dealing with death magic. And it makes it so if you just need a little bit of a boost from magic, you can play mostly as a Napoleonic era Empire type play, with a little bit of magic sprinkled in there to make it interesting, right? But again, very heavy guns. So that's what I would say about Elspeth's campaign. I can recommend both Elspeth and the Tamron campaign. Review coming on the dwarf side of stuff when I have more experience with it. But barring no more questions, we're going to go ahead and break the initial review off. If you want to leave a question in the comment section down below, you can still have an opportunity to drive future review of this particular DLC. So anyway, that is all for me today when it comes to the Thrones of Decay DLC. I think that separating each of those components out was a good call.